Chapter 88, Part 2. The sheep, already mentioned, Moses was proceeding with them and conducting them. And when he had ascended the top of a lofty rock, Mount Sinai, the God of the sheep sent him to them. Afterwards, I perceived their God standing before them with an aspect terrific and severe. And when they all beheld him, they were frightened at his countenance. All of them were alarmed and trembled. They cried out after that sheep, Moses, and to the other sheep, Aaron, who had been with him, and who was in the midst of them, saying, We are not able to stand before our God, or to look upon him. Then that sheep, who conducted them, went away, and ascended the top of the rock. When the rest of the sheep began to grow blind, and to wander from the path which he had shown them, but he knew it not. Their God, however, was moved with great indignation against them, and when that sheep had learned what had happened, he descended from the top of the rock, and coming to them, found that there were many which had become blind, and had wandered from his path. As soon as they beheld him, they feared and trembled at his presence, and became desirous of returning to their fold. Then that sheep, taking with him other sheep, sons of Levi, went to those which had wandered, and afterwards began to kill them. They were terrified at his countenance. Then he caused those which had wandered to return, who went back to their fold. I likewise saw there, in the vision, that this sheep became a man, built an house for the God of the sheep, and made them all stand in that house, tabernacle. I perceived also that the sheep which proceeded to meet this sheep Moses, their conductor, died. I saw too that all the great sheep perished, older, while smaller ones rose up. In their place, younger entered into a pasture, promised land, and approached a river of water, Jordan. Then that sheep, their conductor, who became a man, was separated from them, and died. Moses. All the sheep sought after him, and cried for him, with bitter lamentation. I saw likewise that they ceased to cry after that sheep, and passed over the river of water, Jordan. And that there arose other sheep, all of whom conducted them, instead of those who were dead, and who had previously conducted them, Joshua. Then I saw that the sheep entered into a goodly place, and a territory delectable and glorious. I saw also that they became satiated, that their house was in the midst of a delectable territory, and that sometimes their eyes were opened, and that sometimes they were blind, until another sheep arose and conducted them. He brought them all back, and their eyes were opened. Then dogs, foxes, and wild boars nations began to devour them, until again another sheep three arose, the master of the flock, one of themselves, a ram, to conduct them. This ram began to butt on every side those dogs, foxes, and wild boars, until they all perished. But the former sheep opened his eyes, and saw the ram in the midst of them, who had laid aside his glory. And he began to strike the sheep, treading upon them, and behaving himself without dignity. Then their God sent the former sheep again to a still different sheep, and raised him up to be a ram, and to conduct them instead of that sheep who had laid aside his glory. Going therefore to him, and conversing with him alone, he raised up that ram, and made him a prince and leader of the flock, all the time that the dogs troubled the sheep. The first ram paid respect to this latter ram. Then the latter ram arose, and fled away from before his face, and I saw that those dogs caused the first ram to fall. That ram likewise begat many sheep, and died. Then there was a smaller sheep, a ram, instead of him, which became a prince and leader, conducting the flock. And the sheep increased in size, and multiplied. And all the dogs, foxes, and wild boars feared, and fled away from him. That ram also struck, and killed all the wild beasts, so that they could not again prevail in the midst of the sheep, nor at any time ever snatch them away.